Right, guys, let's talk about shoulder training. So when training shoulders, many of us are looking for those wide shoulders. And it's likely you're wanting the wide shoulders because if you remember back to the golden ratio, we want the wide shoulders and we want the tight waist. We want to emphasize that V taper from the wide shoulders to the waist and that golden ratio. So bringing out your shoulders and really getting your shoulder width to grow the right way can be a great way that you can start to embody more of that aesthetic physique. So let's get into training shoulders the right way. Regarding the shoulders, we have 3 core points to our deltoids, which are our general shoulder cap muscles that we want to look at. So we have 3 portions of the deltoids. We have the anterior, we have the lateral, and the rear delts. So in the picture here, the anterior portion, we have the anterior delt, we have the lateral portion of the delt out here, and then back here we have the posterior delt, we have the rear delt. So that's our deltoids. A lot of times when we're talking aesthetics, we want to have the shoulders grow, and most people are focused primarily on their deltoids. There are many more shoulder muscles, and we can look at those here. We can look at the muscles of the scapula, the stabilizers of the scapula. We have over a dozen muscles that attach to the scapula, everything from the infraspinatus on the back here. We have the teres major, we have the teres minor, we also have the supraspinatus up here. The rhomboids also attach to the scapula, and then on the front side, which we can't visualize here, is the subscapularis, and yeah, that hits your primary shoulder muscles through here. When it comes to aesthetics with the shoulders, most people are focused on the deltoid, and that's what we're focusing on here. When it comes to corrective exercises, correcting posture, stability, strengthening, rehab exercises, a lot of times we're targeting more of these shoulder scapula stabilizers in through here. And in the rehab world, we tend to want to shut off the deltoids and do exercises in a way where we shut off the deltoids so that we can target some of these deeper rotator cuff stabilizers. That's for a different application. For us, talking specifically aesthetics, we want to bring out the deltoids and really make these deltoids strong and make them pop. That's what we're focusing on here. When we're looking at the core exercises to target the deltoids, we have the 3 different portions of the deltoid, the front, the side, and the back. With overhead presses, we are targeting primarily the anterior, the front deltoid, whether that's doing it with a barbell, a dumbbell, whether that's single arm, double arm, for doing any sort of presses forward, that's targeting the deltoid. And that's what you see here in me doing this shoulder press, military dumbbell press, is that's targeting primarily the anterior deltoid through here. Cables, face pulls, you can see here, as I mentioned in the previous training on the trapezius, face pulls is one of the best shoulder exercises for your shoulders, for your traps. Doing face pulls is one of the best things that you can do all around for your posture, for aesthetics. I do a shit ton of face pulls. I do face pulls nearly every time that I go to the gym in some degree. Sometimes I'm doing it with a rope, doing a cable. Sometimes I may do one arm at a time. You can also do it with dumbbells where you're bent over. There's a lot of different ways that you can do face pulls and so many different variations. The key is to have some form of face pull in your routine. Then we get into the rear delts. So to target more of the rear delts, what we want to do is more of a bent over row, or you can also do like a bent over row like this. For example, you can see I'm doing more of a sort of high row with a barbell, and that's going to target a lot of the back side of the shoulder along with some of the trapezius, the shoulder stabilizers. But this is a big mover for the rear delt and a little bit of the lat depending on your angle. That's a good way to target the rear delt. When it comes to the lateral delt, we can do lateral delt raises using a dumbbell, using a cable. And one of my favorite ways to do delt raises or lateral raises is to use cables and to do an Egyptian lateral raise. And this is we'll see if you can see here, can't see this arm on the other side, but I'm holding onto the pole and I'm getting a slight lean away from the pole. And it's with that lean, it changes the resistance curve. It changes the angle of what the deltoid does. So you can see here, and I could probably even have more lean going on than I actually have here, where I could be leaning out more this direction, and that would allow me to target target more of my lateral deltoid through a full range of motion. Lateral raises with the cable is a great way to target the lateral delt. And the key with the delt raises is the cable resistance will be a little bit different than the dumbbell resistance. The reason is because as you move through that range of motion, with a dumbbell, the most resistance you're going to have is right out here. If you're doing a full raise with a cable, you're also going to have more resistance through that curve because you're pulling that cable consistently the whole time. So you're getting a consistent resistance through that full range of motion. Now, if we applied that with a band, what you would see is as you pull the arm up further and further, the resistance is increasing all the way up until the end range of the motion. So what you're using for your resistance matters, whether that's a dumbbell, whether that's a cable, whether that's a band. They all have different resistance curves. Targeting specific parts of the muscle belly and certain fibers of the muscle, you want to understand what parts of the muscle you're wanting to grow, and then what form of resistance is actually going to target that curve, that portion of the muscle fibers. That's something we'll talk a little bit more about later, but just something to keep in mind. You want to be aware of the type of resistances that you're using, and if you're wanting to overload more of the end range of your deltoids, well, you might want to look at using bands so that you can target more of the end range. So shoulder training, one of my favorite things to train, and a lot of days now I'm only targeting the lateral delts and the rear delts, and also more of the trapezius. I don't do much for anterior delts anymore, and the reason for that is because I'm so anterior delt dominant as it is that any sort of pressing movements, my delts tend to take over rather than my chest. So for me specifically, I look to tone down more of the anterior delts so I can target more of the chest, and then I target more of the lateral delts